When we first discovered the Titanic, I was not allowed to tell the true story because actually I served in naval intelligence for 30 years.
The unsinkable ship was a ghost for over 7 decades until one man decided to track a trail of crumbs across the seafloor. Robert Ballard knew that finding the Titanic would take more than just luck. It would take the help of the United States Navy and a story that everyone would believe.
The third dive was the dive, because that dive, we landed at the entrance to the grand staircase between the number 1 and number 2 stacks.
Everyone's obsessed with the grand staircase and the gold. But the real story is about what the ocean is doing to the steel right now. The crazy part is that the ship is disappearing, and Ballard's latest admission proves we are running out of time to see it. The classified discovery. The Navy told Ballard that if he could find and map the 2 lost submarines, he could use whatever time was left to look for the famous ship. It was a brilliant plan because nobody would question a famous explorer looking for the most famous shipwreck in history. Ballard spent weeks mapping the twisted remains of the nuclear subs, learning exactly how steel breaks when it hits the bottom of the ocean. He noticed that the heavy parts of the submarines fell straight down, while the lighter debris drifted with the current. This created a long trail of wreckage on the seafloor. This was the key that would eventually lead him to his big prize. The search for the submarines was grim work, but it gave Ballard the tactical experience he needed to navigate the abyss. He had to be careful because the pressure at 12,000 feet is enough to crush almost anything. The Navy wanted to make sure the nuclear reactors were still safe and that no foreign powers had messed with the sites. Once he finished that high-stakes job, he only had 12 days left to find the Titanic. Most people thought it was an impossible task. They had been looking for the ship for 74 years without any luck. But Ballard had a secret weapon. He wasn't looking for the ship itself. He was looking for the trail of debris it must have left behind as it sank. He knew that the Titanic was an enormous vessel, weighing over 46,000 tons. When something that big breaks apart and sinks over 2 miles, it doesn't just vanish. It leaves a path of destruction. He decided to stop using traditional sonar and start using his new camera system, Argo. This remote-controlled sled would glide just above the mud, sending live video back to the surface. It was a boring process, watching hours of gray mud and sand. The crew was exhausted, and the clock was ticking down to the final hours of the mission. But then, right around midnight, a single object appeared on the screen. It was a massive boiler, one of the 29 that once powered the great ship. The room went silent. They had done it. The discovery was a technical victory, but the reality of the sight was much heavier than any of them expected. The search was over, but the mystery of the broken hull was just beginning to unfold. The ocean at 12,000 feet is a world apart where pressure can crush steel and darkness stretches forever. To find the wreck, Ballard had to rely on machines that could survive where humans could not. The centerpiece of his mission was Argo, a remote-operated sled that changed everything about deep-sea exploration. It was equipped with cameras that could see through the murky water, giving the team a real-time look at the seafloor. Alongside Argo was Angus, another unmanned system that provided wider shots of the area. Together, these tools allowed Ballard to map the site with incredible precision. Ballard used his experience from the submarine mission to track the debris. He followed a trail of boilers, pieces of coal, and twisted metal that stretched for miles across the ocean floor. Every single piece of junk was a clue. He realized that the ship had not stayed whole on the way down. This was a massive discovery because for years, survivors had argued about whether the ship broke in two. Some said they saw it happen, while others insisted it sank in one piece. The cameras provided the first undeniable proof. The forces of nature had been so violent that they literally ripped the largest moving object in the world apart. Mapping the site was like trying to put together a puzzle the size of a city. Ballard and his team had to be meticulous. They recorded every plate of steel and every porthole. They saw the grand staircase was gone, replaced by a gaping hole that led into the dark heart of the ship. They saw the massive anchors still hanging in place, and the mast collapsed across the deck. It was a haunting sight. The technology allowed them to see the ship without ever touching it, preserving the site as a museum of the deep. Hands down, it was the most impressive use of underwater technology anyone had ever seen at that time. The crazy part is that they were doing all of this while the world thought they were just on a simple scientific trip. The Navy was watching closely, making sure Ballard didn't share too much about the submarine locations. He had to be a scientist and a secret agent at the same time. The images they brought back were crisp and clear, showing the world the face of the Titanic for the first time since 1912. It was no longer a legend. It was a physical place that people could finally see. But as they looked closer at the images, they realized that the ship was not alone on the seafloor. Every rusted plate held a story, but the most haunting finds were the things that weren't steel. When the cameras moved past the giant engines and the broken hull, they started to find the things that belonged to the passengers. This is where the mission turned from an engineering project into a somber memorial. Ballard found shoes scattered across the mud, lying in pairs just as they might have been on a person's feet. Because the bodies of the victims had long ago been reclaimed by the sea, these personal items were all that was left to mark where they had fallen. It was a chilling reminder that over 1,500 people lost their lives in these freezing waters. The debris field was filled with the ordinary objects of life. There were dishes from the dining saloon, some of them still stacked neatly as if waiting for a meal that would never come. There were silver platters, wine bottles, and even pieces of luggage that had survived the 2-mile drop. Ballard made a very controversial decision right then and there. He refused to bring anything up. Many people wanted him to grab gold or artifacts to put in a museum, but he felt that would be grave robbing. To him, the Titanic was a sacred place that deserved to be left alone. Yeah, about that. Not everyone agreed with him. In the years that followed, other teams went down and started picking up thousands of items. They brought up pieces of the hull, jewelry, and even a large section of the ship's side. Ballard was heartbroken by this. He believed that once you take the items away, you strip the site of its history. He wanted the ship to remain a silent witness to the tragedy. He noticed that the cold and the pressure had preserved things in a weird way. While the wood was mostly gone, eaten by sea worms, the metal was being consumed by something else entirely. He saw weird, icicle-shaped formations hanging off the ship. These are called rusticles. They are created by tiny microbes that actually eat the iron in the steel. The ship is literally being eaten alive by nature. The rusticles look like melting wax, and they are incredibly fragile. If you touch them, they turn into dust. This means that the Titanic is slowly dissolving into the ocean. Ballard realized that his discovery was only a snapshot in time. One day there will be nothing left but a red stain on the bottom of the Atlantic. He also found the Diana of Versailles, a small statue that once stood in the first-class lounge. It was lying face up in the dirt, a symbol of the luxury that had been swallowed by the dark. Seeing these things made the crew stop celebrating their success. They held a memorial service on the deck of their ship, reflecting on the lives that ended there. It wasn't just about finding a ship anymore. It was about honoring a memory. The ship was a monument to human ambition, but also to human failure. It was a place where class and money didn't matter once the water started rising. What most people don't realize is how quiet it is down there. There are no currents to move the debris, so everything stays exactly where it landed. It is a moment frozen in time. But as the microbes continue their work, that frozen moment is starting to thaw. The ship is changing every single year, and the structures that Ballard first saw are starting to collapse under their own weight. The clock is ticking for the great ship, and soon the ocean will finish what it started. The final descent. Today the Titanic is locked in a silent, high-stakes race against time, and it is a race that the ship is destined to lose. For decades after Robert Ballard and his team first laid eyes on the wreck in 1985, the ship seemed like a static monument, a frozen moment in history preserved by the freezing, high-pressure darkness of the North Atlantic. But modern expeditions, equipped with 4K and 8K cameras, have revealed a sobering reality. The ship is falling apart much faster than anyone predicted. The decay isn't just gradual, it is accelerating. The iconic railing at the bow, the very spot that has become the universal symbol of the ship's grandeur and the setting for countless cinematic recreations, has recently collapsed. It didn't just bend, it gave way, falling into the silt of the ocean floor. This loss is symbolic of the ship's overall state. The officers' quarters, where Captain Smith and his crew spent their final hours, are caving in. The roof of the gymnasium, once filled with state-of-the-art rowing machines and electric horses, has vanished entirely. Experts and maritime archaeologists now suggest that within a few decades, the internal structure will be so compromised that the entire wreck might cave in on itself, leaving nothing but a heap of rusted metal and a debris field. The primary culprits in this disappearance are not just the crushing currents or the weight of the water, but life itself. Iron-eating bacteria, specifically a species named Halomonas titanicae in honor of the ship, are working 24 hours a day to turn the steel into powder. These bacteria create rusticles, icicle-like formations of rust that hang from the hull and the decks. These rusticles are actually complex biological communities that extract minerals from the iron, weakening the structural integrity of the ship from the inside out. It is a natural process, a form of deep-sea recycling, but it is incredibly hard to watch a legend disappear. Every time a submersible visits the site, the pilots notice something new has vanished. A bathtub that was once a famous landmark in the captain's quarters is now gone, buried under the collapsing ceiling. The decks are pancaking, one falling onto the next as the support beams dissolve. We are witnessing the slow-motion cremation of a giant. Robert Ballard has spent his final years fighting a different kind of battle, a crusade to protect the site from human interference. For Ballard, the Titanic is not a salvage yard or a treasure chest. It is a mass grave that deserves the same respect as a battlefield or a cemetery. Because of his tireless advocacy, the wreck is now protected under international law, a feat that seemed impossible when it was first discovered in international waters. Since 2012, the site has been under the protection of UNESCO. This designation was a landmark moment for underwater cultural heritage. It means that, in theory, people are not supposed to disturb the site or take things from it without explicit permission from various international bodies. However, enforcement in the middle of the North Atlantic, 2 miles down, is a logistical nightmare. Ballard believes that the best way to see the Titanic, and the only way that ensures its survival for a few more years, is through virtual exploration. He has been a vocal critic of souvenir hunting and commercial salvage operations. He wants people to use high-tech robots and fiber-optic cameras to visit the ship without ever touching the fragile, thinning metal. By creating a digital twin of the wreck, we can preserve the experience of the Titanic for future generations, even after the physical ship has been reclaimed by the Earth. This way, the ship can stay where it is for as long as possible, undisturbed by the thrusters of submersibles or the hooks of salvage gear. The crazy part of the Titanic story is that even as the ship decays, we are still finding new things. We are in a golden age of Titanic research, fueled by technology that was science fiction in 1985. High-definition scans and photogrammetry have allowed us to see the wreck in ways that Ballard never could. In the mid-'80s, explorers were limited by the narrow beams of flashlights and the small viewports of submersibles. They saw the Titanic in fragments, a boiler here, a piece of railing there. Today we can see the entire debris field in a single crystal-clear image. These maps show how the pieces are scattered over several miles of the ocean floor, revealing the violent physics of the ship's final moments. We can see the Hell's Kitchen area, where thousands of pieces of fine china lie perfectly preserved in the mud, and the boiler field, where the massive engines came to rest. We have found more personal items, and using cabin plans and passenger manifests, we have even identified which cabins specific items came from. We can see shoes lying in pairs on the seabed, a haunting reminder that a body was once there before the sea reclaimed the bone. But for Ballard, the most important part isn't the data or the artifacts, it's the lesson the ship teaches us. It is a reminder that even our greatest, most sophisticated inventions are no match for the raw power of the ocean. Ballard's legacy is forever tied to the Titanic, but his career spanned much more than a single shipwreck. He has since found other famous wrecks like the German battleship Bismarck and the USS Yorktown, but the Titanic remains his most important discovery because of the layers of meaning it carries. It wasn't just about the ship or the secret Navy mission that funded the search. For a long time, the public didn't know that the search for the Titanic was a cover for a Cold War operation to inspect the wrecks of two lost nuclear submarines, the Thresher and the Scorpion. Ballard's admission about this mission only makes the story more interesting. It shows that history is often hidden under layers of secrets, and that the things we think we know are only half the story. The Titanic was the prize the Navy allowed him to seek once his real work was done. It is a bridge between the world of 1912, an era of industrial hubris, and the world of the 1980s, an era of technological espionage and secret warfare. So, here's the deal. The ship is dying, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. We can't put a dome over it, and we can't treat the metal to stop the bacteria. We can only watch and record as it slowly turns back into the earth. Ballard has made his peace with that. He knows that he was the first human to see the ship in 74 years, and he has spent the rest of his life making sure we never forget the human cost of that night. The tragedy of the Titanic isn't just that it sank, but that it took so many dreams down with it. The dreams of immigrants looking for a new life, the dreams of engineers who thought they had conquered the sea, and the dreams of families who were separated in the chaos. As the hull continues to crumble and the ceilings collapse, those dreams stay buried in the mud, protected by the silence of the deep and the advocacy of the man who found them. The thing is, we have to wonder if we are really seeing everything there is to see. With the ship falling apart, some secrets might be revealed for the first time as the interior opens up. We might finally see into the cargo holds or the lower deck cabins that have been sealed since 1912. But just as quickly as these secrets are revealed, they will be lost forever as the structure fails. Ballard's legacy is tied to this wreck, and his final admissions have given us a new perspective on the most famous disaster in history. He taught us that the Titanic is more than just a wreck, it's a mirror. When we look at the Titanic, we see our own reflection, our brilliance, our bravery, and our devastating arrogance. We are left wondering what else is still waiting to be found in the deep, dark corners of our oceans. There are thousands of ships down there, each with its own story, but none hold the same grip on our imagination as the Titanic. It is the ultimate memento mori, a reminder that everything man made eventually returns to the elements. The legend is fading into the silt, and the physical ship will one day be nothing more than a brown stain on the Atlantic floor. But the questions it leaves behind, about our responsibility to the past, our vulnerability to nature, and the ethics of exploration, will haunt us forever. The Titanic is disappearing, but its ghost is more present now than ever before. We are the last generations to see the ship as a ship. Those who come after us will only know it as a memory, a digital scan, and a story told in the dark. Do you think we should keep bringing up artifacts from the Titanic before they dissolve into dust? Or should we leave the site completely untouched out of respect? Tell us what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Ballard's secrets, please like and subscribe for more.